So it's me, Martin Crossy's chat, together with the fabulous silver medal couple from British Rowing, second to none, Karen Bennett and John. You can see them there, John Collins. Hi guys.
Hello.
You could join us after a hard day's training, and I know we've been chatting already about what you've been doing. You've been in that house for lockdown how long now?
8 coming up to 9 weeks now.
We've lost count. Everything's just rolled into one, and we're just kind of getting on with it. Yeah. How many did you think?
I think we're coming up to 9 weeks now.
Maybe 10. Who knows? It feels like a long time anyway.
It does feel like a long time. Did you imagine when you first went into lockdown that it'd be as long as this?
I think I did, actually. I was definitely prepared for the long run. I thought it's going to be, this stuff is really serious, what's going on in the world and in our country. So you kind of respect that and know that it's going to be a long time before everything's going to get back to normal. So I definitely was in the mindset as though we're not going back for a very, very long time. So yeah, I think we kind of got our heads around it and just tried to get on with things.
Yeah, we definitely worked on the assumption that this was going to be a long-term thing. So we sort of, because, you know, we're trying to set things up, like we got the gazebo for the bad weather and stuff like that. So if it did just keep on going, we were good to go.
Yeah, we've got like weights and stuff for a bike as well. So yeah, we were in for the long run.
So are you guys on the same training program, or have you been? Because Jürgen's kind of like the coach of both squads, or have your coaches been setting different programs, or have you been setting your own programs?
No, so Jürgen sends out like a not really a template, but he has like because he's obviously very aware that people's situations are quite different. But I think everyone has an ergo. Some people have some weights, some people have bikes, and some people can or cannot run. So he has like a baseline program which you kind of should follow. But then there are like optional sessions that you can kind of decide what you're going to do yourself. So it's sort of like 50-50 what he said and what you want to do.
Yeah, and the men and women are on the same program as well, which is quite good because obviously means that, so John and I, we've both got an ergo each, and it means that we can actually do the training alongside each other, which is really helpful, I find anyway.
You do that? Do you do all the sessions, all those erg sessions?
Yeah.
Side by side.
Yeah, I can't wait to see how many miles we've clocked up at the end of lockdown.
I do actually know. I think I've done something close to 500 kilometers of steady state so far.
Yeah, it's quite a lot, but that's okay. And we've maybe had, I think, one disagreement on the ergo.
Yeah.
But it was quite... Pardon?
What can you say about that?
Well, it was actually quite funny because it was in the middle of a UT1. So neither one of us could stop what we were doing and have a go at the other one. So we kind of just, we were out of sync because he was pulling me up to a rate that I didn't want to go to.
I was pushing the rate up, but I was also getting annoyed because she wasn't separating properly. So we started like fighting each other, rode out of time for a bit, and then I was like, no, back in time.
And then we had about like 3K or something to just think about our actions and what we'd done, and you know, and then by the time we'd finished and we'd stopped, we were both ready to be like, okay, this is how I feel and this is what the problem was, and okay, let's get over it, rather than just stopping and being like blaming each other. So that was once, but it was good. It was actually quite funny looking back on it now. At the time it wasn't really that funny.
Yeah. So do you get the chance to coach each other during ergo sessions then?
I guess in some way, yeah, a bit of coaching, but we don't do it like, oh, John, you need to rock over a bit more.
It's more like comments, like passing comments. So I'll say, I'll be like, I find it quite difficult to stay in time with you sometimes because you're like just rocking a bit before your hands are moving, or and she'll be like, oh, you're just sitting at the front a little bit too long, or something like that. And it's like more things to just keep us moving in time together, but they're sort of coaching points in themselves.
Yeah.
So, do you get sort of tests sort of every week or something like that to do, or every couple of weeks, or is it just the endurance training that you've ground out?
Like, we're not sort of. Not, I mean, at the moment, there's not really any point in doing like proper tests, but we do have, like we've got our sort of standard 30-minute rate 20 we do quite often. We've had quite a few of those. And, at the weekend, Jürgen is very conscious that things could go quite stale in this time. So he's been setting us a lot of like weird and wonderful pieces to do. Like we did a 3K erg test one week, and I've never done one of those before, and that was horrific.
What pacing do you do for a 3K?
I tried to go under 6-minute pace for it, and didn't manage to. I blew up trying to do that. So, it was fine, but it's quite fun. Every couple of weeks he sends out the program with a, it's almost like a bit of excitement to see what weird, wonderful things he's included. So yeah, it's quite interesting.
That's really interesting. And I was chatting with Ollie Zeidler last week, and he was saying that, in order to get better on the ergo, you have to train a lot more on the ergo. And he was talking in relation to maybe having a crack at the world record. So have you noticed that you've got better on the ergo since you've been doing this, or?
Yeah.
Like last week, we both got PBs on our 30-minute test, and we've got a 2K in next week or something, like not like a flat out one, but just like a kind of try and do something solid, and like with that sort of thing, you can like see where you're at a little bit, and if you fancy it, go for a big one. And so, we got these markers, and they're definitely getting a lot faster.
That must be quite motivational then.
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, it's definitely, because we don't often get a period of time like this to really do some big work. Like we do get periods of time, but they're always a lot shorter because there's trials and there's different training camps to go to and things like that. So we don't get 8 weeks of real ergo work and fitness work to just see how far we can go. So, especially for me, like I've never been an enormous ergo puller, but I've never been rubbish. So it's actually quite nice to see my scores going towards the realms of being quite good.
That's really nice. And do you have any idea of how long this will continue for, or when you might be allowed back in singles, I guess, on the water?
Don't know. I think it's like a real kind of health and safety thing. We need to make sure that everything's not okay, but we've got the time from, say, when Boris makes his announcement as to things can start going back. And I know he's already made an announcement, but we're not quite sure what way it's going to go. So I know that British Rowing are being very cautious and, really following the rules as to what to do, and really like obeying them as well. So I think it will be a little while yet before we're able to go out on the water. But I mean, that's fine. We've got plenty of stuff to keep us occupied.
Yeah.
And we're like, well, I can only speak for myself here, but I'm quite happy doing the training at home, and we're getting really fit, and that's fine. And when we're allowed out on the water, that'll be great. We'll probably complain about it at some point, but we won't take it for granted, and it'll mean much more to us, I think.
Yeah.
So what kind of things have you learnt about yourself in this lockdown that you might not have known before, as a couple or each other?
We've been getting on pretty well, haven't we?
I've been amazed at how little we've bickered.
Yeah.
I was a little bit nervous when this started. I was like, we're going to be snapping at each other quite quickly, but actually it's been all right.
Yeah, it's like a real test, I think, for couples, because I said to Mo when the announcement happened, and we were all told to go home, and for the foreseeable future, I said to Mo, this is going to be a real test of your marriage. Like, nobody's ever been tested like this before. So it will be like good for us all to see, what happens. And I'm just glad we've been going out for quite a while. Because the new couples, I've heard that some people have kind of got together in the last few months, and it's one of those things where it's like, well, do you stay with them, or do you go your separate ways? Yeah.
Who does the cooking in your relationship? Telfin Beddoes just asked that on Facebook.
We've
actually had a bit of a bicker about this over the past couple of days.
It used to be more me than Karen, but now since lockdown, Karen's taken over a lot more.
Yeah. I think it's because I've been doing the food shops as well, and I do our weekly
Karen, because plans. Karen does the food shop, so she did meal plans. And so I'm just always like, oh, Karen's got a plan for dinner, so that'll be that.
So I'll just sit here and not do anything, and I'll just enjoy being cooked for.
Yeah. I'll put the eggs away or something.
Yeah. Does that leave you more time to do PlayStation then, John?
Yeah, maybe a little bit.
He loves the PlayStation. It's unbelievable.
What are you playing? What games are you playing?
Call of Duty at the moment. Because, funnily enough, so do you know Phil Clapp, the big guy who pulls the huge 500-meter ergos?
Yeah.
And Will Fletcher, and so I play with them quite a lot, and it's actually. I'm using it as the excuse that it gives me a chance to talk to other people. That I got to go on and play with those guys. So it keeps me sociable. Otherwise, Karen would be the only person I speak to.
Yeah.
When he puts it like that, when he phrases it like that, I can't say no. I have to let him go and speak to other people. So I'm like, okay, on you go then.
How do you socialise, Karen? Or you do it through PlayStation, John. How do you socialise, Karen? Is it on Zoom calls or?
Yeah, so I've got so I chat to my mum, my sister, my dad every single day. So I do an exercise class for them. So it's quite funny because my sister is 30 weeks pregnant, and my mum's a little bit older. So it's quite funny trying to put together a session that both of them benefit from. So that's kind of been keeping me occupied. So I do that every day, probably for at least an hour, I'd say. And then we do Zoom calls twice a week with some of the girls in the team at the moment. And then I obviously keep in touch with the Rio girls as well. We kind of Zoom call once every couple of weeks or once a week, which is quite nice. Yeah. And then I've got my friends from back home in Scotland as well, and we do quizzes with my school friends. So I keep in touch with people quite a lot. So that's how I'm kind of getting my non-rowing chat, which is quite nice.
So you're gonna, I would say you're gonna miss this time together, but you sound very used to sort of lockdown and the routine, and you've got your various ways of being that's working really well for you.
Yeah, I think it's really important, to be in a bit of a routine.
Yeah.
And that's something that we got into very early on. So, John always gets up first and he does his stuff in the morning. I don't know, I'm sleeping, but we do that, and then we've got a set time for our first session, and we get that done, and then we do our little bits in the afternoon, and then we'll do another session later, which is good. So I think our routine's works really well for us.
Definitely helped.
Yeah.
So let's look back a little bit, because it must have been very strange, the whole thing around trials. I know you had to withdraw from trials, John, final trials this year, but just the final trials and then the selection procedure. So maybe you could just talk about how that was, because I gather that you guys were told you were selected in a particular boat, and then a couple of days that was rescinded by the British Olympic Association when they heard the Olympics were cancelled. It must have been weird.
Yeah. So there was the trial. Obviously, I didn't race because I was a bit under the weather, but there was the trial and some testing and stuff, and it was a bit of a weird time, because you could tell the world was kind of burning down around us, and we were almost in a rush to get it done, and but we did, and they sort of called us to a meeting. Jurgen called us into a huge all squad meeting out the front of the boathouse. He sort of like named the boats, and then in the same breath told us to grab an ergo and go home. And because I think it all happened so fast, like no one really knew what to do or how to handle it. And then a couple of days later, we got an email from Brendan saying, look, guys, as I'm sure you can imagine, like with everything happening the way it is, like these selections, these sort of provisional selections are now back up in the air because it's looking like the Olympics is going to be postponed for God knows how long. So we're going to have to just like take a step back and see where we are when we know everything, know things in a more concrete way.
But you worked so hard for that selection. I was talking to Ollie Cook from the 4, and it was his impression that the selection process, we've been involved in the Rio selection process, but the selection process for Tokyo was even tougher than Rio. So I think he found it, because he was in the 4, he found that even more difficult to take.
Yeah, I like it's definitely. I think that the thing is with the Rio team is you had, especially because they prioritized the 4. We knew we were going to have an 8 that would probably do very well, and we had a 4 that was almost certainly going to absolutely smash it. So it's very easy to put those boats together because almost everyone in those boats had medals, and obviously this Olympiad hasn't been as fruitful. So there are more questions that have to be answered each year when it comes to selection, and like it does. There's that sort of balance. You do have to, Jurgen has to be quite thorough in finding out, who goes where. But that's obviously incredibly stressful for all of us because everything's so high pressure. And he's like trying to balance, continuing certain projects whilst making sure it's the right people and all this sort of stuff. And it's been, I'd say I've been quite fortunate that I've had quite a smooth run of things this year. Apart from final trials, obviously, but like even for me, like I'm not someone who is a particular victim of stress, but I was finding it very stressful myself. So it's been a brutal year.
And I guess Graham had a great trials performance. You were strong in the double last year, qualified the boat, just missed the medal. That was looking good for Tokyo, I guess.
Yeah, that was the sort of way we were heading. We spent a lot of time in it and trying to build on from last year. So that's what it looked like. That's what was going to be going forward. But obviously, not any. Well, hopefully it will still carry on. But that's sort of kind of back to the drawing board. But I can't Jurgen's not stupid. He's gonna he's obviously gonna. He's not just going to go, oh, well, that's it, then we'll start again. I'm sure he's going to go, okay, well, we came to this stage, where can we move forward from there? So, it'll be quite interesting to see how this all works. No one knows, even Jurgen, who's the man who pulls all the strings, I bet even he hasn't, is struggling to have a clue as to what to do because this is just such an unprecedented situation.
Yeah. And Karen, were you ready to row in the 8?
I was ready to row. It was a bit of a weird season for me because my pair's partner unfortunately had a bit of overtraining syndrome or fatigue. I'm not 100% sure what it was, so I wouldn't be able to comment on that. So I've had a bit of a kind of up and down season, but individually, I on the rowing machine and off the water, I was hitting the scores and being really strong and doing my thing. So I was kind of ready to get out there in whatever boat that I was selected in and kind of make the most of the opportunity. But as John said, I think we're kind of back to the drawing board to see what's going to happen next year. Yeah.
Can we just look at it? You've both had success in rowing, and I kind of want, just to think about those races. I think one thing that's I find fascinating, just to think of you guys as a couple, is in terms of how you handle different levels of success between you. Because, you know, Karen, you had that medal success in the Olympics, and I know, John, you were really happy with that semi-final row in Rio. But you would have hoped for a medal, I guess, in that performance, and ended up finishing 5th. And then in 2017, John, you got that silver medal, and Karen, you were back in, was it in the 8th? Was it in 5th place? I can't remember.
Yeah, it was.
So how do you do that as a couple? How do you handle different levels of achievement between the two of you?
That's actually a really good question, because I think we probably have, I think there's only maybe twice I can count where we both had a good day in terms of racing, and every other time it's kind of like either John does well and I say don't think I've done as well, and vice versa. So I think it's always, I have to say, I probably take it more badly than what John does. When I've underperformed, I'm not like, just don't speak to me, because I'm in a full mood. And then when I do really well, I always say I'm happy, but then I see how well John handles like not doing as well as what he'd hoped, and I actually feel quite bad about the way I react to the way he reacts.
I've just got a bit more practice of having disappointing results, so it's I'm better at handling it.
Yeah, so I think over the years we've definitely kind of like come to a level where we're very happy for the other person, but then the other person feels for the other person that's not done as bad, if that makes sense.
I'd say the only time where it's really been like a struggle in that respect was probably in Rio, because there was such a finality to that. And like for me personally, you know, I was, at the time of the race, I was very proud of the result, but then the way like the Olympics works and the sort of you know, the parties for the medalists and the little things that, like, I mean, it's such small things, but it's like a free pair of sunglasses for all the medalists. And I remember being in the Oakley house, and there were these really nice wooden framed Oakleys, and I sort of sweet talked this bloke for ages, and then asked him if I could possibly have a pair, and he kind of asked me how I did at the Olympics, and then was like, nah. And I remember just being so heartbroken by that. Such a little thing, but and so like the disappointment of that was like really stamped home. And I sort of, in retrospect, look back on that and go like, poor, like I don't know how Karen actually handled being around me, because I was like all over the shop, and she had an Olympic medal and was sort of, you know, had something to go and celebrate. And I you know, I was very conscious that my mood swings could drag that down very quickly.
Yeah.
I think as well, it was like there was things at the Olympics, say that, so we would kind of get like VIP tickets for whatever, and John would have to be my +1, even though he'd placed only a couple of places below me, and he was still Olympian. Like, he's still done outstandingly well. And it's just stuff like that that's really, it's very brutal.
Yeah, very brutal.
Yeah.
John, in terms of another brutal thing, I'm just going to see if I can share a screen here. And you were, if you can see that. What was this? I mean, that was one of the most striking interviews I've seen, really. And I know, you know, it was tough up in the altitude camp there.
Yeah.
Can you talk us through that? I mean, as I guess thousands of people have seen it.
Yeah.
Yeah, like that was actually quite. I felt like a bit of a wally at the time, because we'd done this session. And I'd actually forgotten about this session from the previous year. It was 2 2Ks and a 1K. And from the first stroke of the first piece, I was absolutely dying. And I remember it was one of those sessions where you just have no idea how you're going to possibly finish it. but I somehow did. And then I had to go quickly, run back to my room, get changed, put on my British Rowing t-shirt, have some lunch, run back down for an interview. And I was so tired, I don't remember getting back there. And they start talking about the guy, Geraint Thomas, a really nice bloke, and he's chatting away to me about Rio. And he's sort of really digging into the sort of disappointment of it and what made it so brutally disappointing and all those little details. And then, the camera starts rolling and he sort of finishes off that part of the interview and then says, okay, well, what would an Olympic medal look like? And at the time, I'm like semi-delirious and, like sort of in that place of the sort of emotional state, reliving all those Rio moments. And I think I just visualised what it would be like to cross an Olympic finish line and, be like, yeah, gold medal.
Yeah.
And, I'm thinking about like hanging a medal over my dad's neck and, like celebrating with my friends and family and, like got really emotional about that. And, I just couldn't, I was trying to explain that to him. And at the time I just couldn't hold it in and I was just like, done. And, at the time, I just felt like such an idiot because I hadn't actually communicated what I wanted to say. But then when it came out, I had all these messages from people I'd never spoken to saying how awesome it was. And I was just like, well, I was actually quite glad that I got that out there because at least it's not the sort of usual sterile, we love rowing, we hope to do very well chat. It was like a bit of actual heart in there. So I was quite happy with it in the end.
Yeah. It was a bit like... I don't know if you guys have been. A lot of people are watching Last Dance at the moment.
We've watched that.
Just behind the scenes about what goes on. It was just a glimpse. It almost happened with rowing, with the story Gold Fever about the Redgrave and Pinsent, Foster and Cracknell 4.
Yeah,
where they had a kind of behind the scenes look. But I guess it's unusual because you don't really see a lot of behind the scenes at Caversham, and that was quite striking for it.
Yeah. Yeah, they're like, I'd say that there is stuff like that. I mean, in such a competitive environment, people don't often like show their emotions like that. There's a lot of like strong people that like to keep it bottled up, and I hadn't even intended to get that emotional, but it just kind of happened.
Yeah. Jamie Kirkwood's on the chat, and he's asked. If you see anyone quitting before the Olympics who made provisional selection as they can't see themselves doing another year.
I don't think so.
Sure.
I mean, like...
I'm not sure. I don't know. I think it's like very personal, isn't it? And you don't know what everyone's situation is.
Yeah. Certainly not people that were sort of provisionally lined up for boats and stuff. Like the people sort of around more closer to the edge of the team, I don't know. But even there, I can't think of anyone off the top of my head.
Yeah. Okay, another question. Johnny Searle, you might have answered this already, John. Johnny Searle asked for both of you, what's the toughest training session, if you can remember, that you've ever done?
I actually think it was that one in Sierra Nevada, the 2K, 1K. Like, on paper, it wasn't that bad, but... It's just at sea level, it would be like a solid session, but in Sierra Nevada, you're just suffocating from stroke one. And I think it's one of the, I'm not someone that ever, even no matter how bad a session gets, I'll always just be able to finish it, no matter how slow I go. Whereas that was one where I really wanted to put the handle down every single stroke of the way. It was a real mental battle to not put the handle down. So for me, it was that.
Yeah. How about you, Karen?
I think I'm trying to think what. There's a lot of sessions that are very hard. Trying to pick which one's the hardest. We used to do this session where you would kind of like build up through the rates, and then at the end, it was something I honestly can't remember off the top of my head, but it must have been maybe about 5K, and you'd build up, to start off at UT1, and then you'd build up to the end. It would be like a flat out 2K, but because you've obviously built up and you've got all that lactate in your legs, it's really horrendous by the time you get to the end. And I think we used to do that in the summer as well. So the heat is on, and we were on the water as well doing it, and it's just absolutely savage. But there are quite a lot to pick from, I have to say. But that would probably be the one that I think that was really bad.
Karen, I'd like to take you back to that Rio year, because it was quite a remarkable crew that you had. You called yourselves the Stassi crew.
Yeah.
You delighted in that. Would you just like to explain what all that was about?
We were just like, I think it was one day actually, we were in a viz on a training camp, and the boat wasn't even set. We were just out in a crew, like a combination, and I think Zoe de Toledo said something, and Fran just hit back with her. It was something really quite out there and a bit sassy, and Zoe was just a bit like, oh, Fran, that was a bit sassy. Yeah. And then I think that just stuck the whole way. So yeah, it kind of just went from there, and then we just used sassy for everything, and then that's how it developed really. But yeah, that was awesome. That really good.
You were definitely a crew with a strong second half.
Yes.
Or just a lazy first half.
Yeah, it depends which way you look at it.
Yeah. Did you ever try to go out hard? What was your strategy for for that Rio Olympic race? Because I know that you'd had a really strong finish in the Europeans.
Yeah. Well, Europeans was our first race together. And I guess because it was our first race, like you just kind of, you get on with it, you have a plan, and you go out and you do that. And it just so happened that, I don't know if you remember, but at Europeans at Brandenburg that year, the weather was absolutely horrific. I think it was a blazing crosswind.
Yeah, it was.
So we kind of started. Yeah, we started like very slow, and then built up as the race went on, as it maybe got a little bit calmer. And for some reason, that was just the way that we raced. I'm not entirely sure, but we never intended to go out. We never said, right, how about we just start really slow, and then, you know what, at the K we'll really just put a big push in. But I do remember in that Rio race that Fran was always very much, we never do anything different. Like the way we train is the way that we race, and we're not going to go into a race because it's an Olympic final. We're not going to just go out there and we need to do something different because it's an Olympic final. We need to grasp things from everywhere to try and to make a difference, you know. So we were all very much on, we're just going to go out there and do exactly what we've been doing day in, day out. And I remember, you know, going off the start, and I was just focusing on one stroke at a time, not even thinking about anything else because I was petrified. And then probably about 500 to 750 meters in, I remember thinking it's really quiet. And because I was sat at the front of the boat in the 7th seat, I was very aware that there was no one beside us. Because everyone was ahead of us. Yeah. And it was, going through the K and then through the 750, I just thought to myself, you know, really, like, we can't come all this way to not get a medal, and to not get the minimum of a silver medal, because that's all we'd done that whole season. We'd either got a silver or a gold medal, and I thought, we can't, like, probably an underperformance would have been a bronze medal. It sounds ridiculous now to say that, but at the time that's just the way it was. And through the K we were still last.
What was the call through the K? I mean, because it was a special third quarter for you.
Wake up.
Harder. No, do you know what? I can't remember what the call was, and I'll need to ask Zoe what she said and the rest of the girls. But But you went from last to second in that third quarter. Yeah, we just had a really good sprint. I think it was kind of you just empty the tank, and I don't know if perhaps people went off too fast because maybe they were trying to do something different to what they'd never done before. Like, I'm not sure, because I do remember the USA. I don't think they were leading at the K.
No.
I want to say it was Canada that were ahead. So. And so I think it wasn't a case of we went off really slowly. It might have been a case of that everybody just went for it and, just went out there to do something different because it was an Olympic final. I'm not sure. But we know that we always had a strong second half, and we never stopped believing that we could do it. And I think we all had belief in each other that we would do it. And
is that the best you've ever felt in a rowing race, or not?
I feel pretty horrific in all rowing races. I remember actually that being one of the worst that I felt at the end.
No, but in terms of how the boat felt, sorry, I should have been more clear. How the boat felt, Karen? Was the water too difficult?
Yeah, if I'm honest, I think it was actually a pretty ropey race. Because it's an Olympic final, you're a bit nervous, it's a bit kind of, it didn't feel that smooth. It didn't feel great. I have to say it probably wasn't our best rowing. But the way that we practiced in training, we could still go out there with not our best rowing and still get a medal. And that's the way that we trained, and that's what happened.
Yeah. And crossing the line, I think there's a shot of you just coming up to the line, very close on the Romanians. How was it for you crossing the line? I remember from my Olympics, I felt nothing at all when I crossed the line, which was different to the two guys in front of me. What was your reaction?
I mean, I was absolutely spent by the end. And what I said earlier about, if we'd got a bronze medal, we probably would have underperformed.
It was a while before we knew, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a photo finish, and we didn't actually know if we did get the silver or the bronze. So having that moment, it was probably about 10 seconds, but it felt like 10 minutes of, I'm a very negative thinker. Like, I always think the worst, because then if it's better, then that's great. So I just kind of gathered my thoughts together, and if we got a bronze medal, that just wouldn't have been great. But then I remember Olivia, who was sitting behind me, I remember her just saying, we got the silver, and then she just splashed like water. And that's when I knew that we'd got the silver medal, and it was kind of more of it was a relief. That we'd actually done. And I know it wasn't a gold medal, but the fact that we'd gone out there and we hadn't underperformed, and it was the first medal that a British women's eight had got was fantastic. And what better way to do it than with the girls that I did it with?
Where were you watching the race, John?
I was in the grandstand. I was in the grandstand nursing a hangover. Because my race was the day before, so I'd gone for a few beers that night. And 2 o'clock or something. So it was to be fair, it was a good way to spend that day.
Yeah. I've got John a couple of your races just maybe to have a look at and have a little thought through. I kind of looked at your double in 2016 because I'd seen you guys, Collins and Walton just as a double for so long in the B final, at the back end of the A final, and I believe that was your first ever World Cup medal.
Yeah, first senior medal. And
I know how delighted you were for it. What do you remember of that race?
So we were going well before that. We sort of knew we were we were very confident in how. I mean, to be fair with Johnny and I, we never were going badly. It was just whether we were strong enough to put up a fight against all the big, strong doubles. And I remember we had an all right heat, and then in the semi-final we came third, but we had like a very average row and hadn't worked particularly hard. We sort of just snuck through, and that was the first time we'd made an A final without having to absolutely destroy ourselves.
Yeah.
And I remember Mark Banks giving us an absolute, he told us off so badly for not doing the job that we had planned to do. And I turned around to him and said, "Look, Mark, it's the first time we've made a final without absolutely murdering ourselves. Like, I'm really excited for tomorrow." And he was like, "Well, okay then, if you say so." And I said to Johnny, I was like, "Well, we've just got to show him." And so it was a really weird race. I had my sort of technical plan, my sort of technical focus, and I remember just like almost staring at the stern, and I thought I was almost like a robot. I just thought about the same thing over and over and over again for about 600 or 700 meters, and then was like, "Oh, I best see where we are." And then realised we were winning the race, and was like, "All right, well, I'll just keep going then."
So you weren't surprised? I mean, because for you guys to be out in front ahead of, you had Tufter and Borsch in that race. You had the 2018 French World Champions to your left. It was a real quality field. You weren't thinking, what's going on here, were you?
I mean, a little bit, obviously, because it was a place we'd never been before. But we hadn't long since swapped around, because obviously Johnny was sat in the stroke seat for a long time, and the reason we swapped around originally was because we thought we might have to do some seat racing, and Mark wanted us to sit the other way round for a bit in case we had to do some doubles testing, so we wouldn't be completely inexperienced in the other seats. And it ended up going all right, so we just kind of stuck with it.
Yeah.
And so we saw it was one of those things where had we been sat the original way round, we might have both been going, "Oh, we're not supposed to be here." But when in that combination, it was just an unknown. So we, the other way around, we didn't really know what to expect. And so when we found ourselves there, we were like, "Well, maybe we're just really good, so let's keep going."
Yeah. And coming up to the finish, it was a close finish with the New Zealanders just coming through. But that was sweet, that first World Cup medal.
Yeah, honestly, that last 250 was the longest 250 of a race I think I've ever had in my life. I was absolutely dying, and I was just hanging on because I could see the French were absolutely charging at us. I remember they came back at us so fast, and I was just like, "Hold on, and you'll get a medal. You'll get your first medal." And we managed it. And I remember Johnny was like slapping me on the back and stuff, and I was just like, I was so dead to the world.
Wow. And you've had Poznan's a great course for you. It is now a great course. In 2017, you were in that quad that was in front of a lot of other decent crews, clear and winning.
Yeah, that was a really good race. I'd say, as I said before, the semi-final of the Olympics and that, I'd say as close to a sort of perfect performance as I've ever delivered in any boat. This actually this race, this Poznan race kind of frustrates me in a way, because we won so convincingly, but we actually didn't go through our second half gears all the way. I really wanted to because I could see we were cruising at sort of mid-race pace, and that was obviously going very well. But because it was like a little bit choppy and we were winning by so much, we sort of made the call to not wind it up and up. And actually, I really wanted to, because I was like, we can have more. I'm quite greedy. When things are going well, I just wanted more and more and more. But
you were about 36 at the end of that, weren't you? Something like that.
Yeah, Pete was like, "No, I'm not risking catching a crab. Like we're staying down." He was like, "We're not giving up a gold to in this choppy water."
I guess you must have wondered a lot, because after the Olympics, the retention rate from the sculling squad was quite good, and there were results like that.
Yeah.
Winning Lucerne as well, where you came through on lane one, and yet there's probably been disappointments at the World Championship results, particularly for the quad. I mean, how's that been explained within the group, or is that something that's difficult to grasp?
It's a really tricky situation. Like, it's obviously very frustrating, but like when you consider what's actually happened, like we lost Pete in 2017 with his back, and he sort of came back and did a winter and then realised he needed hip surgery, so we kind of lost him for that 2018 year. So then, and on top of that, in the 2017 year, Graham and Angus had both had hip surgery, so they were coming back. And then in 2018, we were trying to like work out where they all fit. And then in 2019, everyone's healthy, and it's like, okay, well, what do we do now? Let's see where things go. So it's the situations, the sort of the circumstances around like what sort of where everyone is has kind of thrown a spanner in the works of like any continuity. And like obviously that's frustrating, but at the same time, the only time we've really known, like the only time I knew that me and Graham were any good in a double was when we did seat racing right before we were selected, and it was like, oh, this is quite good, and then that was that, and so you kind of want to find out all of this stuff, and and it's a tough situation, but it's just kind of, it is what it is almost.
Matthew Britton asked, both of you really, in terms of when you feel, it was a conversation with Ollie Zeidler, and I asked him, where did he feel when the boat was going well? Which part of his body did he feel it in? And particularly the wind up for the last 500, and was it his feet, his hands, or something else? What about for you guys? Where do you feel it when the boat's going well, just like you like?
I really feel it in the recovery, and just being really smooth. And really relaxed as well, like no tension in the hamstrings, really coming up onto the toes. That's where I find it, and I can just visualize myself rowing and what I look like from, because I obviously look at video, and I look at the World Rowing video and BBC video, and that's how I visualize myself. And going off the start, I know exactly how it's supposed to feel, and I know what it is like to feel good, and it's very much in the recovery going forward to the catch.
How often have you felt in the zone, Karen, in your career?
I mean, quite a lot of the time, in terms of with racing. Like I'm always on it for racing, and I always
not in that sense. I just mean where things are just happening and they're so good and it's almost effortless, but you're working really hard. That kind of
with racing or training as well as a whole.
I guess racing I'm thinking of, but could be training as well.
Yeah, I mean,
Europeans.
Yeah, you kind of have your off days, obviously, but a lot of the time, like, you prepare yourself so you're going to be the best for racing. So I do find I try and really get that visualization every time I'm racing, and sometimes it's not there, but I really try and make it happen. So I'd say probably quite a lot of the time, because I'm quite vigilant with that.
Yeah. How about you, John? Whereabouts is it important for you to feel it?
I think for me, it's weird. It's like almost like around from my, like this sort of U shape from your arms round to your other arm, like across your chest. I find that when I'm rowing well, that tends to be very soft and relaxed, and like that. I think that was something I actually picked up watching a video of the Sinkovich brothers in the double. I remember when I got put in the stroke seat of the double, I was like, well, how, like I'm actually in charge of making a rhythm now. Like, how do I do it? And so obviously go to the fastest double ever and see what they do. And I remember seeing that, and that's something I really try and copy. And actually that for me works very well. Like the one that really comes to mind is Poznan with Graham, when we got silver in that. You know, we had that really big, strong headwind, and I remember just being so like chilled out up top, despite, you know, headwinds normally cause you to like grip up and harden up top.
Yeah.
And actually, I was very soft up top, and it for me, it kind of makes my breathing a bit calmer, and everything sort of feels like a bit more slow motion. That's when I feel like things are going well.
That's really interesting. And I guess your quad in 2017, we're going to have a little look at that race in just a minute. I mean, that was a good season for you, and we've just seen that win in Poznan, but you must have gone there with tremendous confidence. And then I guess maybe Karen, you were there as a spectator. Were you watching this race from the grandstand when Pete Lambert did his back in?
I was actually in the hotel because we were racing the following day. Was the quads race before the eights? Because we were, that was it. The women's 8 was the last race of the
that's right.
So I remember I was in the hotel, and I obviously only had the like world rowing footage, and I was watching that, and I just didn't have a clue what was going on. I had no idea. And then I was getting messages from my coach, because I was like, what's going on? Like, tell me what's happening. Because he's obviously trying to like calm me down, because I'm racing the following day and my emotions can't be up and down and all over the place. So yeah, and I'd heard there was like lots of rumors going around, you know, Graham was having was it a corn dog?
Someone said he had a beer and a hot dog. I mean, he had to race the next day, so there's no danger.
Yeah, I don't think so. But it's quite funny the way people talk about it, and you can just imagine Graham with a beer and a corn dog, and then all of a sudden he has to go and race, and he's like Superman, like running across,
throwing his clothes off,
chucking his clothes off, and he's got his all-in-one on. But yeah, I had no idea what was going on, so I was kind of relying on other people messaging me.
John, there's a picture of you on the start there. I was reading, I think, from your blog, and you know, anyone wants to follow John's progress. John does a blog, which is really worth reading. But you talked about that race of how with Pete Lambert's back, it was just like, you know, there was a rigger loose, or you know, you had to tighten up a foot stretcher. I was really quite struck by that. It was just quite.
So he there are a few things, like he's always been someone who like shuffles around a little bit. I always think because he spent so long in the quad, he's always got a bit comfortable and likes to just wriggle around to make himself feel more comfortable. But we did a practice. It was our last practice start. You know, like I think it was like 10 or 12 strokes or something, and like he was really moving around on his seat and through it. And then we stopped, and we actually stopped the start early. He just stopped rowing, and he sort of started moving. And I know that he's sometimes sick before a race from nerves, and I thought it was to be sick, but he's like moving around on his seat, and I'm thinking, oh, any moment he's going to chuck over the side. And then he turns around to me and goes, oh, we need to go in, my back's gone. And I was like, sorry, what? And yeah, that was weird. That whole situation was weird, because there was no like, he was obviously very emotional, but for the rest of us, it was like it was just so calm and cold, and we just got on with it. And I remember thinking, like, I should be completely losing it right now, but it was just such a weird situation to find yourself in. Like, it's not something you'd ever expect to sort of experience.
Here are you on the start. I mean, what was going through your mind sat on the start in the sort of second version of this crew?
It was kind of just like, to be fair, like, obviously we're frustrated because we'd turned up and we thought we're gonna, you know, like the way things were going, it was us versus the Lithuanians, and we thought we had what it took to hold them off in the last bit, to hold on to get ourselves into gold and stay there. And so obviously that aspect of you're really frustrated. But then obviously you lose one man, and then suddenly it's like, well, you're in a world champs final, and anything other than last is a bonus. So I'm kind of sat there just going, well, let's see what this is about then. And it was like probably one of the least, it's probably the least amount of pressure I've ever felt for a race of any magnitude. let alone a championship final.
I mean, you could obviously tell it was different with Graham as you were going through the first 500, but you know, you're in second place. What are you thinking?
To be honest, so Graham had the steering foot, and he's not really done much steering. So all I was doing was staring at the right-hand buoy line, telling him to steer left and telling him to calm down because he was blowing us up so fast.
Would you not go off at like rate, I don't know, 50? You told him not to.
We were quite a low rating crew, like with Pete. Like we generally cruised at like 30. Well, I say low rating crew. We cruised at like 36, 37 or something like that, and we went off in the low 40s. But with Graham, we went off at 50 something and sat at like 38 or 39 or something. And we just like, it's the same in the double. I just could not keep up. And yeah, I remember just thinking, like, please just let me breathe. But I guess like the thing is had we tried to do it the same way, we might not have done as well. Like Graham's strength is that he pulls really, really hard, and it, you know, like just letting him do his thing was probably the best thing we could have done. Yeah.
So through the race, 1,000 meters, right there in the Lithuanians. Do you have much of a memory of that second 1,000?
Not in the third 500. Like the third 500 was normally where we would really do some damage to the field. And I remember just seeing the Lithuanians like cruise on through us, and I was a bit like, oh, well, that's that then. Because a part of me kind of like, we knew the Dutch were going to blow up eventually because they did all year. Whereas with the Lithuanians, I kind of hoped that we might hold them off. But they were kind of apparent there that we weren't going to. Until, well, to be fair, then at 500 to go, Graham just absolutely it was like someone had replaced him with a completely fresh athlete, and he went absolutely mad. And I was like, well, maybe we will get them back. Who knows? But by that point, like the bow three were hanging on for dear life, and Graham was just getting started.
Yeah, and then second place just from Estonia, unbelievable result.
Yeah, like that was. I mean, it was a hard thing to celebrate. Like in the situation, obviously it was exceptional, and like, you know, that was incredible to come away with that. But at the same time, we came off the water to collect our medals, and Lambert was right there. Like, could barely walk because his back was so sore. And, you know, like, we'd all been in it. We'd been such a tight-knit unit. To kind of finish without him was it sort of made the victory feel quite hollow for a long while. And it's only sort of later that I look back and go, oh, that was amazing. Like, you know, and I'm very grateful that we had Graham there, because I don't think there's a better man for that job than him. Like, having someone who is as much of a freak as he is as your spare man that was such a blessing.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I mean, that's really interesting to hear that. I mean, just coming back to the present and maybe looking a bit forward. You're both 31 now, so Tokyo you'll be 32. Paris you'll be 36. Have you got any plans? Oh, Paris should be 35.
Yeah.
Have you got any plans beyond Tokyo, or is that not something that you talk about?
I don't know. I mean, as you've just said, you know, we're not getting any younger. Well, I certainly am. Neither my hormones. So I don't know. I don't know what I'm going to do. I mean, I think John probably has the capacity to keep going. But with the Olympics obviously being postponed, and then it'll only be 3 years until Paris, I don't know. I'm not sure that I'll be able to carry on, but you never know. Never say never.
I definitely go in swings and roundabouts. Like, I really enjoy it. It's such a good lifestyle. You're hanging out with your mates. You're staying fit. You know, like, even like this year, I PB'd on everything. I think every parameter, like measurable parameter that we test on, I've managed to PB on. Well, on the ergo at least. So physically, I'm definitely still improving. And I don't know, like, part of me thinks, well, whilst that's continuing, why don't I just keep going? But then I do find myself sometimes like obviously we're putting some thought into what happens after rowing, and those things can get quite exciting. So it's a tough one. Like, I sort of swing backwards and forwards between wanting to call it a day and go and do the other cool stuff there is to do, and actually wanting to give it another go.
Yeah. So it's been a fantastic chat with you guys. I can't believe it's almost been an hour. So have you got dinner prepared, Karen, or are you going to head off and...
We actually
do you know what, Crossy? We've done it.
You've eaten already.
Been in the kitchen. I've made it up, and
I played PlayStation. She made dinner. It was great.
No, he actually helped me just because I had a go at him yesterday. So now he's like, "Can I help? Okay. What can I do?"
I guess listening to you, and you're in such great form and great shape. Do you think this is going to help you in any way? This delay for the Olympics, it's going to be better for you, or?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think so. Like, on like a personal kind of level, probably could have done with the Olympics happening this year, but you get on with the situation that you're in, and I think as a team, definitely the women's team anyway, I think we could definitely take advantage from what's happening. We can get stronger, we can get fitter, we can get better in the boats, we can get better in the units, and yeah, we can really use this to our advantage. And just having, because the team is so fresh and so young, with not a lot of experience, it just gives us a bit more time to get our butts into gear. But I think, had the Olympics been this year, I think we would have been ready, because you have to be ready. But I think, just it being another year away, then that just plays into our hands, I think.
For me personally, I'm like quite a methodical athlete. I think I am still getting better with time, so another year is going to be fine for me. And I think on the men's side, there's a lot of guys who, as the years have gone on, like, if I'm honest, when I first came back after Rio, there was a lot of guys who I sort of looked at and thought, yeah, probably not. And then now they're like the cornerstones of the team and things like that. And the guys have all like moved on so much. Like, I can't even believe it from what I remember straight after Rio.
Yeah.
And so like another year can only be a good thing for a team like this. There's not a whole load of like aging multiple Olympians who are like on their sort of third or fourth Olympics and are sort of hanging on to their form. There's just a lot of young guys who are like surging forward. And I actually think that there are some guys who kind of would have done okay at the Olympics, but are now probably going to do very well, because like the guys in that four, for example, in last year's four, like they're all like so enthusiastic and very, very like guys like Sholto. He's the one that comes to mind in this situation. He's just surging forward at a rate of knots, and I think someone like him is going to benefit so much from this.
Yeah.
It definitely, there's definitely a lot of positives to take from this situation in sort of British rowing's case.
Yeah, well, it's been amazing talking to you guys, and really, really interesting just to see. Also, I mean, thank you for letting us see that your dynamics as a couple, super couple. That's been really interesting. So pleased you're able to talk about that. And well, I guess is it beers in on Friday night now?
Yeah, like, I mean, we haven't got any serious trials or anything coming up, so a few beers have been partaken.
Yeah, I have to say it's actually been quite nice just being able to take a step back, and because it's obviously been like go, it's Olympic year, you need to perform here, do this test, you're racing here, and now it's kind of just like, calm.
It's almost like a holiday in its own right.
Relax and have a glass of wine during the week. Like, that's absolutely fine. So it is a lot more chilled, which is good.
You are amazing, both of you. It's been great to listen to you. Leave a comment if you enjoyed Karen and John and hearing what they've said. But thank you very much. You both been fantastic.
Good to see you.
See you. Bye. Bye.